going to record the videos for this as a video as well. So yo, what's up guys? If you're watching from the YouTube channel, like that video. Why not? Just do it. Just do it. Besides that, the reason of this video, because we're expecting a balance patch to be released within like a week or two-ish. But I actually wanted to talk about the balancing of the game currently. And that I would actually say that the current balancing is pretty legit. Like, it's strange to say, but I think it's near to never been this close for units to be around those 50% win rates. Which a lot of the time in any kind of balancing, you had like a whole bunch of units that had like super crazy high win rates, like going like 54, 55, that kind of stuff. But as you can see, Marsha's picked a lot, sure, that can arguably say that therefore it's not balanced. But it's not on a super high win rate. If you had this kind of pick rate and you had like a 55 win rate, yeah, then you would be hella broken, right? So I'm kind of looking at it from a statistical point of view. And of course, a whole bunch of people are going to comment on this video. Man, say you're selling us bullshit. Oliver is OP, this is OP, that is OP, blah, blah, that. The main thing is, which is funny, by people think that Oliver is more OP or feel that Oliver is more OP than other units, is because you really notice it if it doesn't kill you right away. It's like a cat that drags a bird out of the air and then he starts stomping it a few times, plays around with it, and then after a day actually decides to kill it. That's Oliver. And that's more tilting, but that doesn't make the unit better. It just makes it more annoying. But it's not necessarily better because of being annoying. No, it's just more annoying to face. Because it's very long, dragged out fight. Whereas, sure, Oliver has the 33 lead. That part is really good about it. But it can reset your whole team and push back the attack bar of all your units. Yeah, this one does it in one skill. Like, by all means, this one legitimately does it in one skill. Sure, you don't have as much cycling and that kind of stuff. But he does it single target. So yeah, all in all, sure, it is definitely a good unit. I'm not defending it saying it's not a good unit. Of course it is a good unit. But I wouldn't say it's that OP as people think it is sometimes. At least statistically wise, we can say that sure, it's a very good unit, very high pick rate, very high win rate. Same for Dominic, same for Shizuka. But it's not that it is impossible to play against, for example. And I was just going through the list of these units and the win rates. This is not by all means like a tier list or anything. I'm not planning to make a tier list until probably after the prelims. But I'm just gonna look through win rates a bit and point out a few things that I find interesting, few things that I find concerning, few things that I would say, okay, we're actually in a good spot of balancing. So if you look at the first 4 units mainly picked, they actually have pretty high win rates. Well, at least 51 plus, 51 plus, 51 plus. Just under 50, more actually has been in a worse spot. Gianna used to be at like 54-ish, which dropped down a bunch. I'm not entirely sure what for, maybe there's more counters to it right now. But yeah, CP back at a 50, so if a unit is at 50, I would say it's pretty balanced. We can also see Wusa is back at a 50, so Wusa's actually making kind of a comeback as well. Juno is close to 50. Molong is getting pretty close to 50. Nana, I don't really understand. Because Nana actually, her win rate started climbing again. And I'm not entirely sure what for. Because she was actually nerfed twice already right now. Her win rate started dropping quite some after that. But I think people pick Nana right now more in positions where you should pick a Nana. Rather than, same as like if, let's say, 40% people would pick less Marsha's, her win rate would probably go up because she's picked in a moment she should be picked, rather than spammed as first pick. So for that reason, a unit that is good but placed in a better position than to just flip it in because it has a high pick rate, I think that would also for these units up their win rates if they're not just spammed into matches. And I think that's kind of the reason why Nana's getting a high win rate. Riley is actually pretty low. I'm surprised about that, but I guess it's just not bringing enough against the heavy pickers, that stuff. Ragdoll is kind of lower than normal, I would say. Segment is kind of low-ish as well, but I think it's also kind of drafted in scenarios where you kind of start to lose already, and then it's kind of more like a panic pick. Lima's pretty high up still, around same as last season. I think a little bit less actually. Miles is also very much overdrafted in my opinion, because I feel like Miles is a lot better than the win rate is showing here. But you shouldn't draft him into pretty much no buff teams. Or teams where he just gets stunned or doesn't get a turn or anything like that. Sierra more or less the same, but she's kind of falling off a little bit as well. Hey is trying to counter stuff, which is mostly hard to counter stuff, so not that many people have good results with that. Leo, funny enough, I saw Agok talk about Leo before, and he was very much on like Leo is the most busted OP unit, blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. That's a very heavy bias. He plays Tableau Jamire for 6 seasons straight, and that's hardest countered by Leo. Of course, Leo is your most annoying unit you can think of, but that's just a crazy bias. That's saying like, okay, I run all of my units on 100 crit rate, and I think Ragdoll is the most OP unit. That's logical. That's just a super hard bias towards the units you have. Sure, the ban rate on the Leo is very high, but it's a very strong bias. So if you were ever thinking of like unit X, I'm just giving the example of ACOG right now, but more people think that way. If you think like unit X is the most OP shit ever, it is probably just because that unit counters you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have complained about it. So I would not necessarily say that Leo is a super OP unit by all means. It's a very good 5th pick, a very good last pick. It's a very good 4th ban. But we're actually going to look at things as well when... oh, wait, let me actually log in so we can actually see the data as well for when it's a 4v4. Because that's actually very interesting data that this website also has. And that is where you can check like, okay, I only want to G3 data. So I can see like, okay, in G3, for example, Shizuka has a higher win rate than overall with the others. Well, there's not too many people G3 yet, so that's... It's actually strange it shouldn't have this many replays being G3. That doesn't make any sense. Because there's barely like 10 people G3 right now. But if you see in the 4v4, the 4v4 is actually where it gets interesting. Where you can say, for example, a Gianna has more impact in the game than in the drafting phase. Because her win rate is higher when there is the 4v4. So it actually gets through to the match. For example, Nana is also one of those. It's actually increases by a whole %. So if it's not banned, it actually has a higher chance of winning. Ragdoll, same thing. Funny thing is, Segment has a lower thing. So Segment has more value in the draft of people like fearing like, oh, I will be outspeeded and therefore this unit is very deadly to me. But actually if it's led through, it doesn't do too much in most cases. Sure, of course, in specific drafts. Same for Hey Gang. Hey Gang is a very good example of that as well. We have a 47 if I'm not mistaken. 46 is also kind of low, but it drops down to a 44, which is pretty low, I would say, for a unit that's used for quite a bunch of times. Funny thing is, Leo actually has a lower win rate if he's led through to the match than where he's in the match. So a lot of people fear like, oh, Leo's going to like destroy all of my speed rules and blah, blah, blah. Kind of, but in the end, he feels weaker than he actually is. Yeon Hong is actually... I'm surprised about that Yeon Hong is this low. I really expected Yeon Hong to be a higher win rate because I feel like it's one of the better units out there right now to take first turn. And you have a lot of options with those first turn units, I guess. So we have Naftis being pretty high. Bolfric. I think Bolfric is probably also a pick that's higher in the draft. A higher win rate in the draft than outside of the draft. Where is the Bolfric? Yeah, Bolfric actually drops in win rate the moment he's in the match. We got Tian Lang on pretty high win rates once again. Qingtian Dasheng is kind of making a climb again of being better. Tableau, this one was very interesting to me. Tableau is actually on a very high win rate right now. I think this is the highest win rate of Tableau that we've seen in a long time. And he's complaining about like high bans. Tableau is also relatively high ban, I would say. But what's his win rate? In the match, outside of the match is about the same. But Tableau is pretty interesting to see to have a higher win rate because Tableau is the best unit in 4-star RTA. Hands down, 100% best unit there is in 4-star RTA. However, him dragging to 5-star RTA, so or like just normal RTA, he starts lacking a lot by hard counters, for example, Leo, a bunch of the LD5s, a bunch of other stuff. There's more passives, there's more annoying stuff, and Tablo cannot really do his stuff. However, current units that you have with, for example, a Oliver or a Masha or a Dominic or even Shizuka Tablo, those 4 units really shine together with Tablo. So because of those units being enabled and being that good right now, Tablo's win rate is actually increasing quite a lot. So I feel like Tablo currently is a pretty good unit. This is also one of those Luxac units that don't work most of the time. She, funny enough, always had a high win rate. And the main reason for that is that she's mostly just used in moments where she's supposed to be used, rather than overused. And that just gives her a high win rate, which is kind of funny. Always has been a good unit, even though not that many people pick it anymore. Cigar, I'm not a big fan of, but still decent win rate. And Tyrus is, I think, also... Would Antares be higher in win rate in or out of the game? About the same. About the same. Chiwu is also kind of making a comeback. Chiwu was worse before, but I guess is kind of making a comeback too. Douglas, funny enough, is dropping down more and more in the win rate. And that is mainly because even Dominic kills it right now, which is dumb, but is what it is, I guess. Han's still pretty high in there. Charlotte, same thing as Savannah, pretty much. This thing also has been starting to get more used. Tomu actually also has been started to get more used. And she's actually climbing in win rate. I feel like Tomu is not that bad. I think it's kind of a unit people are sleeping on still. And at some point people figure out like where to fit it in the draft. And then it's actually a pretty nice unit. I feel like Artemil is also a unit that's really been slept on. Because Artemil is low-key one of the best counters into an Oliver team. So I feel like people that have Artemil should use it more, I guess. Ganymede's super high up, which is kind of strange, but kind of funny, I guess. Oberon is high. Let's actually look at it from this perspective. And this is where it gets interesting, and this is where I wanted to make the video for, actually. We have Veronica being a 60 fucking % win rate. You could say like, oh, there's just a few people that have her, and they're like very high players and blah, blah, blah. But that's... 60% is crazy, and let me make it even more crazy for you. If it's let through into the match, it's 62.5. People don't know how to play against her because she's new. Still, 62.62, I've never seen a win rate this high. And I've been checking these numbers for like the longest time. Sure, the pick rate is not that high. But let's say a pick rate is not that high and a unit is used by just a few people and they're playing very good. For example, Abella, sure, could be. Or Kraka, kind of weird as well, but you don't go over like 55. Like 55 is already pretty high for a unit that's barely picked and just a few people making it pretty high. But 62.62 is really freaking crazy. So this one, I would say, is definitely on the to nerf list if you ask me. Funny enough, Sean, which a lot of people sleep on as well, is pretty low in the win rate too. But I feel like I've seen Glorious use it a lot. I feel like it's definitely a good unit. Because there's not too many units that AoE CC deal a lot of damage. And also have more utility that way, currently. Because a good AoE stun unit, Carno is inconsistent AoE stunner. Okeanos is an inconsistent AoE stunner. There's not that many sophisticated AoE stunners that make a lot of sense right now. Tian Lang is also very high up. That's still, I arguably say, and I think I will still say, Tian Lang is the strongest counter pick you can play in the game. So that's just really solid. He also does not care about Ragdoll on third. Exactly, and you can actually build him without crit rate, which is also very neat. So I would feel like Sean is a unit that's been slept on as well. Kraka on this high win rate, I'm not entirely sure. Could be decent because you have a lot of bruiser meta. It just doesn't do too well into countering stuff. You just build him with other, like... You don't have specific team comps for Sean. Sean just works with a lot of team comps. But in general, I would say At least have some strippers in there and that kind of stuff. Kraka makes no sense. I'm not entirely sure. Wait, let's look at Kraka, who she's winning against, who she's winning with, and who are the people using her. Okay, so it's Kraka and a bunch of LDs. I'm not sure who the fuck is spamming this shit. Actually, these matches are not that LD heavy. We can hide LDs, right? Yep. So just good with Sierra, Vert, that kind of stuff. Okay. This one is pretty interesting though. Yeah, this one is pretty interesting actually. I'm not sure how that works. I think I tried that before. That if a Nigong is dead and then you use on a dead Nigong, you use the S3, you don't revive yourself. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. But I think I tried it out, but you don't revive yourself or something. But I'm not 100% sure about that. But it's actually interesting to see her that high up. What is she good against? Or good against? A whole bunch of random stuff, actually. Interesting. Kind of the bruiser-ish units. And we can do into LDs. Okay, funny. But yeah, that was interesting for me to see. So to be honest, I feel like in the current meta we have a very good balance patch. To be honest. Sure, you could say like, okay, Dominic can use some tweaking, Oliver can use some tweaking, Shizuka maybe can use some tweaking, all of that kind of stuff. But I would say, in general, we have a pretty good balance patch. One of the better balance patches of all times, if you would ask me. Because you don't have something that's super overtuned. The things that, at least there are a few units that are pretty overtuned, but at least there's multiple. It's not just one. It's not just Molong is overtuned, or it's Hathor is overtuned, or it's Okeanos is overtuned, or Carnold is overtuned. It's not just that, but there's a little bit about a few more units, and they counter each other, and therefore I would say the balancing currently is pretty good. Don't tell me Marsha's balanced. Well, Marsha doesn't even hit a 50% win rate, so arguably I wouldn't even say that she is that OP. Sure, she's a good unit. Sure, you can first pick it. But there's always going to be that one unit that you can first pick. Otherwise, you don't have a first pick, right? It just makes sense that people play what other people see. And you will always have that one unit that's better than other units. But that doesn't mean that the game isn't balanced. So I would arguably say from like balance point of view, I'm pretty curious what they're going to do with the current balance patch. To be honest, I kind of expect a balance patch more revolving around Siege, because we also have the Siege tournament going around. But they could slightly tweak down these units, or they make a fifth unit that counters these units, kind of. Because in the end, Marsha is made as a counter to Oliver. That's the reason that Marsha was buffed. Something to counter Oliver. And they have a lot of these things recently to make it better, I would say. They don't necessarily gut a whole unit. They don't give Oliver, for example, at first which unit was really gutted, like a Laika, for example, was really gutted on its first nerf. They slightly tuned it down, and maybe they can tune it down a little bit more. Like, for example, the Dominic was doing 300%, now it's doing 200%, make it 175 or something, or 150. Something like that. Oliver, I don't know. You could make him do less damage, something like that. Just tweak like the small numbers, or make his S3 give 75% attack bar drain instead of 100, or something like that. Yeah, there's just a whole bunch of options you can do. And yeah, I feel like Shizuka, maybe I would +1 on the S3. Also, another interesting topic for balances always is everyone is saying buff my LDs and don't buff the LDs that I don't have. Buffing LDs does make a lot of sense, but in the other hand also doesn't make too much sense. Because people, the moment, let's say every LD net 5 would be usable in RTA. You know what's going to happen? You only have LD fests. Everyone is going to spam LDs. Like next level spamming LDs. I'm not really sure if that's a meta that people would be happy to play. Because then people would say like, oh, the game is too pay to win because you only win with LDs. Right? So, I understand that for every LD you have, you prefer to have it buffed rather than it's being bad right now, because there, of course, there's a whole bunch of bad LDs. I would say at least 1/3 is just straight up not usable. 1/3 is okayish, and 1/3 is pretty good to OP. But I'm not necessarily sure if it's a good thing for the game and for the balancing to make every LD viable in RTA. I would say try to make LDs that are not viable anywhere right now. At least try to make them viable somewhere else. That is something I do would like to see, that LDs at least are usable. LDs are not storage material, because that's just sad, right? But I wouldn't like to see every LD being good in RTA, because you get a really fucking messy balancing for that. Everyone is just going to hella spam LDs, and everyone is going to cry about the game being too pay to win to actually play the game properly, because you only win with LDs. And sure, currently you win with the good LDs, but if someone has 7 LDs, it doesn't mean he can draft 7 LDs in RTA. Well, I could, but it's not going to be any fun. So LDs are just so rare. Trust me, there's actually more and more people with like 4 or 5 LDs out there right now. There's actually more and more, because you are getting a lot more of LD scrolls these days. Like, you already get back in the days, if you didn't buy, let's say you only bought like the, I don't know, like 1 special pack a month or nothing at all. Let's say you buy nothing at all. How many LD scrolls did you have per month? Like 3? 2 from TOA and 1 from an event or something? Currently, you already have from the login, you have 1 extra. You have TOA doubled, you have TOA hell. You have the daily pack login, you can double from the, what's it called? Like, so much other stuff. You can get up towards, like, I think 3 to 4 times as many LDs as you could in the past. Also, dupe net 5s. So yeah, there's, fuck you, Bash, for getting all of my net 5s. Bash literally gets a fucking net 5 per day. He literally, in the chat, he gets a net 5, and we say, congrats, your daily net 5. Fuck you, Bash. Just had to put it out there. He's stealing, and he barely spends that much on, like, scrolls or anything. But yeah, that's just, you get so many more LDs right now, so you actually have a lot more chance of getting LD5s, or people getting LD5s. So if you would buff every LD unit, then there's a lot of people going to spam like the shit out of LDs, and I don't think it's good for the game as well. So them slowly buffing an LD here and LD there, giving Nafties a good thing, giving, I don't know, they buffed a bunch of those from like 0 to hero, I guess. This one was kind of from 0 to hero. But yeah, that's pretty much my take on the balancing, and things that I expect to see for the balance patch is mainly seeds related. So maybe a windy nerf. Maybe another speed lead for guild battles. Maybe they finally fixed beast riders of guild, or not beast riders, beast monks to have guild leader skills. I think at this point they're just not going to do it just to not. At some point you get a principle thing for not doing because someone told you to do that. I think that is the beast monk thing leader skill right now. They're just not going to do that because we ask them too often to do it. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about choosing one free net 5? I think it's not even that good for the game either. Simply because everyone is going to pick the most OP unit from that moment, and then a balance patch happens and everyone has a unit that's no longer the most OP unit, and then people are going to complain. Simple as that. So yeah, that's pretty much my take on balance patching. I'm very curious to see what they will do. I don't expect them to change too much to RTA right now. But however, I'm not in the balancing team, so and I don't know jack shit about future patches, so this is just my assumption. It is not something that is set in stone or that I heard rumors about or whatever, whatnot. It's just me talking about the balancing. So guys, if you're watching the YouTube video, thanks for watching. And if you're watching on Twitch, we're still going to do the rush.